Shana Tova, everyone. And this morning we also say, Gamar Chatima Tova. May you be inscribed for blessing in the book of life this year. So I invite us to say together. Some people shorten it. It's a little bit of a long phrase to say. Some people say just Gamar Tov. I invite us to say that together. Gamar Tov.
Gamar Tov.
Well, I want to welcome everyone here into this sacred space that we share. And whether that is those of us who are sitting here in the sanctuary this morning, or those of us who are joining online on Facebook and on YouTube, or on our slightly higher resolution channel on tilb.org, you can click the live stream button at the very top. And while it's not necessary for those of us who are here or online, we're going to add to that same chat the link to the online machzor, the online prayer book for today. Well, we know that the words in this prayer book are meant to help us bring ourselves into this space. That it's very possible to enter a new year without that set of intention, and so we place a lot of reminders. A little bit like if anybody here has the practice of having maybe a pad of paper by the, I was going to say by the phone, although our phones are all over the place now. A pad of paper anywhere, or a pad of paper in our phone for that matter. Writing down reminders throughout the week, throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, we set them in front of ourselves and remind ourselves, this coming year, I do want to be better at this. This coming year, I do want to work on this. And so this is the time we have set aside to do teshuvah, to return to that deeper part of ourselves by reflecting on all of those things that we hope to change. And of course, we enter this High Holy Days and this Yom Kippur with powerful and beautiful music. And so I'd like to first say that it is such a gift to be joining and entering into these holidays with our choir. Thank you for bringing your voices to this holiday for each of us. And of course, as well, to David York for bringing us together with the powerful music he offers on the piano and conducting our choir, a real anchor and a critical and powerful part of our musical experience here at Temple Israel. And it is such a gift and such a joy to be led in prayer as you are our Shaliach Tzibor this year, Cantor Cooper, joining us on the Bima as we join together. It is such a gift to be here honoring all those who came before us and looking to a bright future ahead together.
Thank you.
And so, and before we continue, I do have to do a little bit of housekeeping. I imagine we all might have anticipated something along those lines. According to the Los Angeles County Health Guidelines, we are asking everyone to remain masked throughout the service, and that is not just over our mouths, but over our noses as well. And you may also have noticed that Cantor Cooper and I do not have masks on this morning, and that is because we have recently tested for COVID. We have both tested negative, but as an extra precaution as well, we've cleared the first few rows of the sanctuary this morning. I'll ask also that as volunteers come up to read from the podium and from the Bima this morning, that they remain masked so that we can be together and protect not just our spiritual safety, our physical safety as well. Well, this morning we enter into this service with the deep and powerful task of reflection. And so I want to note that our prayer book is set with our hearts in mind, knowing that sometimes the words that are offered from this Bima are exactly the ones we need to hear. And other times there are other words that might speak to our hearts. There are words placed around the machzor. And so as our hearts wander, I invite us to let our eyes wander as well. We all have different ways of entering into prayer this morning. Will we begin on page 135 of our Machzor prayer books. We thank you, living and eternal one, for morning light, for the breath within us, for strength and life renewed. Now it opens before us this Yom Kippur, this Sabbath of Sabbaths, gift of spacious contemplation, mirror for the soul. May we see our lives reflected in this still, clear pool a day apart, unhurried time, an undivided mind. Give us joy in this day that Israel shares. Give us presence and attention, clear vision, a listening heart. We awaken to this morning. We open our eyes and we breathe your name. Page 38. Continue on page 170.
Hanshama Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah,
If our mouths are filled with song as the sea, our tongues with music like the crash of ocean waves, our lips with praise endless as sky above, eyes aglow like sun and moon, our arms reaching toward heaven like eagle's wings, our legs as graceful as the gazelle in flight. Still, our words of thanks to you would not suffice. Adonai, our God and God of all ages, nor could we bless your name enough for your infinite acts of kindness to our ancestors and to us. We continue on page 178. I'd like to invite us to rise in body or in spirit. Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hapoteach lanu sharei rachamim, umeir einei hamchachim lislichato. Yotzer or uvarei choshech, osei shalom uvarei etakol, or olam beotzar chayim, orot meofel omar vayhi. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim alecha, Rachamim, uv tuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit, ma'al rabu ma'asach Adonai. Kulam b'chochma asita, ma'la ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha. Va'al me'orei or she'asita, yifa'arucha sela, or chadash al tzion ta'ir, benizkechu lanu meheira le'oro, baruchat Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. We continue on page 183. I'd like to invite up Lori Arroyo to offer this reading for each of us this morning. Morning.
All who are thirsty, come here for water. Drink deep of Torah, a fathomless well. Seas spread out to distant horizons. Torah encompasses all of the earth. Water revives and refreshes the body. Torah is potent, restoring the soul. Soil and pollution swept away in pure waters. Immersing in Torah, the spirit is cleansed. Earth's precious water, free and untrammeled. Torah is open and belongs to all people. Mighty waters pour down like thunder. Torah is shared in a rainbow of voices. Waters flow from the heights to the valleys. Torah will dwell in the humble of heart. Raindrops swell into powerful rivers. Begin in your learning, and wisdom will grow. Fountain of gardens, wellspring of fresh water. Words of Torah bring life to the world. Our praise to you, Adonai. With love, you offer Israel the gift of Torah.
As we continue on page 186, I'd like to call up Carol Beckerman to offer this reading for us this morning.
Long ago, in the courtyard of the temple, on the holy day of Yom Kippur, the high priest proclaimed aloud the sacred name of God, and all the people fell to the ground, prostrated themselves, and called, "Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever." Millennia have passed, but still we speak these words aloud, witnesses forever to the truth of God's dominion.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We continue on page 194. I'd like to call up Evan Browdy and Bonnie Lowenthal to offer this reading for us this morning.
From Egypt you redeemed us, Adonai our God, and from the slave house you set us free. For this the people who felt your love exalted you, and the ones you found precious sang hymns of praise, blessing, and thanks to the living God who reigns forever, high and exalted, inspiring wonder.
Who humbles the proud and raises the lowly, who frees the captive, redeems the oppressed, and sustains the poor. God responds to the cry of our people, their prayer in time of need. Sing praise to God Most High, most blessed source of blessing, as Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang this joyous song to you.
חדשה, שיבחו גאולים, לשמך שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ואמרו. In body or in spirit, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, uvdeichun umecha, Yehuda v'Yisrael. Go aleinu, Adonai Tzevaot Shemo, Kadosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Ka'al Yisrael.
As we continue on page 198, I'd like to invite up Debbie Ferdman to offer this reading for each of us this morning.
In the depths of the night, by the edge of the river, Jacob was left alone. In heartfelt longing in the temple of God, Hannah uttered her prayer alone. In the barren wilderness, in doubt and despair, Elijah found God alone. On the holiest day in the Holy of Holies, the high priest entered alone. We are bound to one another in myriad ways, but for each soul needs time to itself. In solitude, we meet the solitary one. Silence makes space for the still small voice. For the psalmist says, deep calls unto deep. From the depths of our soul, we seek what is most profound.
Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye hakol.
Amen. Please be seated. Our sovereign God of pardon and forgiveness, let these words of sanctity ascend to you. Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love, your reign of truth. In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal. You record and recount and remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself. For every human hand leaves its mark and imprint like no other. And so a great shofar will cry, a still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold, the day of judgment. For they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into this world pass before you like sheep before their shepherd. And as a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds and decide destiny. You inscribe judgments. Page 208. Continue on page 212. on Rosh Hashanah, this is written, and on the fast of Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age and who will be taken before their time?
Kama yavorun v'chama yibareun mi yhyeh u'mi yamut mi v'kitzo u'mi lo v'kitzo.
Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought?
Mi vaish u'mi vamayim, mi vacherev u'mi vachaya, mi vara'av u'mi vatzama.
Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? And who live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted?
Mi varash u'mi vamagefa, mi vachanika u'mi vasekila, mi yanuach u'mi yanuach, mi yashkit u'mi toraf, mi shalev u'mi yityaser, mi ani u'mi yashir, mi ushpa
but through return. To the right path through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. We continue on page 218. I'd like to invite up Jackie Fritz to offer this reading for us this morning.
We sanctify your name in the world. A celestial song sanctifies you in the realms beyond our world, in the words of your prophet. Holy, holy, holy is the God of heaven's hosts. The fullness of the whole earth is God's glory. God of strength, who gives us strength. God of might, who gives us might. How magnificent the signs of your being throughout the earth. Blessed is the splendor that shines forth from the eternal. Our God is one, Avinu Malkeinu, sovereign source of life and liberation, revealing with mercy all who live. I am Adonai, your God.
Your God.
Kaddish, ne Kaddish, ne Kaddish et shimcha ba'olam, ne Kaddish et shimcha ba'olam, kishem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom. ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא אל זה ואמר. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, אדירנו, אדירנו, אדוני, אדוני, אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו. והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי.
We continue on page 233. Page 220, as we continue our service together. Page 233.
Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo letova.
Amen.
Ufokdeinu bo livracha. Amen. Vehoshienu bo lechaim.
Eternal our God, remember us. Amen. Be mindful of us. Amen. And redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing. Amen.
ובדבר ישועה ורחמים חוס וחוננו, ורחם עלינו, וחושיענו, כי אליך עינינו, כי אל מלך חנון ורחום אתה.
Favor us with words of deliverance and mercy. Show us the depth of your care. God, we await your redemption for your reign of grace and compassion. Page 238. Page 244. Our God, divine presence whose path our ancestors walked, bless us now with words first bestowed on Israel in the time of Moses and Aaron, the threefold blessing given us through Torah that joins our hopes with theirs.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May God bless you and protect you. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so. May you receive the light of God's kindness and grace. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so. May God bestow favor upon you and give you peace. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so. We continue now taking a moment for silent prayer. As we prepare now to offer Avinu Malkeinu and begin our Torah service, I'd like to invite Cynthia Grigoli to prepare and be ready as we offer that blessing and the reading on page 254 after this next reading. And so first we'll offer these words, Avinu Malkeinu, on page 252. I'd like to invite everyone to please rise in body or in spirit. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, together. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you. Avinu Malkeinu, Hamul Aleinu v'al olalenu v'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our families. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale deber v'cherev v'ra'av me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale koltsar umastin me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chaim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. Avinu Malkeinu, Malei Yadenu Birchotecha. Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings. Avinu Malkeinu, Harem Keren Meshichecha. Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption. Avinu Malkeinu, Na'al Teshivenu Rekam Milfanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, away from you, we have nothing. Avinu Malkeinu, Kabel Barachamim, Uvaratzon et Tefilatenu. Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it. Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh Imanu Laman Shemecha. Avinu Malkeinu, act towards us as befits your name. Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh Lema'an Cha. Im lo lemanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake and not for ours. Avinu Malkeinu, ein lanu melech ela ata. Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign. Avinu Malkeinu, patach sha'arei shamayim l'tefilatenu. Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, shema kolenu, chus v'rachem alenu. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu va'anenu, kiein banu ma'asim, yisei imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'oshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Say,
Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, a meditation to remind us what we strive for, a chant that binds us to the chain of generations. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, a moment of purest solidarity with our people's hopes and history, an invitation to affirm or dissent, to challenge or believe, to ask why or say Amen. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, flowing like waters that renew the spirit, refreshing and sweet to nourish the soul. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, every word a blessing, every verse a conversation with God.
In kamocha Elohim Adonai, ein malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imnu le'elom va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitin, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
Please be seated. Well, as we begin our Torah service, I'd like to start by calling up all of our Torah readers, all of our volunteer Torah readers who will be offering these words for each of us this morning. So I invite each of our readers to join us on the bima, and we will offer these words for all of us who would like to follow along. The words can be found on page 266 of our prayer books. These words chosen today specifically because they remind us of the commitment that we make as a community, not just to one another and not just to God, but to a life and a year of goodness. And so we will read these affirmations together this morning. While our Torah readers are coming up and finding their spots, I want to offer out a little bit of teaching and blessing for each one of our readings. So I'd call up our first Torah reader to find their spot in the Torah. And while they're doing that, offer a little bit about this particular reading. It always takes a moment to there. At one point, the table of contents was like the highest and newest form of technology. It was like, cool, did you ever see that scroll? It had a table of contents. So today we roll very carefully through and find our way in the Torah. And sometimes it takes a moment. It always takes a moment to find our place. Not unlike and not for nothing, we do the same search during the High Holy Days, looking at words that not only have we seen for generations, but thousands of years before us, and still it takes a little bit of time to search and find our place among them. Well, this morning we will read from this very first aliyah, Deuteronomy chapter 29, verses 9 through 12. And this aliyah is a reminder that we stand this day making a choice to be a part of this community. And so I'd like to offer for anyone this year who has welcomed a new member into their family. That is birth, adoption, or marriage, or otherwise anyone who is adding to the generations and adding to the wealth of their family. And additionally, I'd like to invite anyone who has made the choice to join this community, anyone who is a new member, for this aliyah as well. And so what I'm going to invite you to do, and this includes everyone who is joining us online as well, and that is if you are taking on this aliyah this morning, I'd like to invite you simply to rise. We'll say the blessing all together. So that is anyone who has invited a new member in their family, perhaps a new child, a new grandchild, anyone who is celebrating a new member of their family, someone who they are bringing into this covenant that we reaffirm this morning. And of course, anyone who has joined our community in this past year as well, who is affirming that covenant in that way additionally. Well, I invite all of us to offer this blessing together. The words for this blessing are on page 258 of our prayer book, and just a gentle reminder that the second line repeats. Let's offer this blessing together. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach. Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'na'atan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Notein HaTorah. Amen.
Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem livnei Adonai Elohehem v'ashehem shivtehem, ziknechem, v'shotehem, kol
Ish Yisrael, Taphem, Nitzehem, V'geraha Asher, Bekerev, Mechanecha, Mehotev, Ezeka Ad, Shoev, Memecha, Learecha, Bivrit, Adonai, Elohecha, Uv alato, Asher, Adonai, Elohecha, Koreit, Imcha, Hayom, Le'ma'an, Hakim Otecha, Hayom lo Le'am, V'hu yi lecha Le'elohim, Ka Asher, Diberlach, V'ka Asher, Nishba, La'avotecha, Le'avraham, Le'yitzhak, Yaakov.
We continue now with the English translation of that same reading.
Okay. Okay. You stand this day, all of you, in the presence of Adonai your God, your tribal heads, elders and officials, every man, woman, and child of Israel, and the stranger in the midst of your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, to enter into the covenant of Adonai your God, and the oath that Adonai your God makes with you this day, to establish you as God's people and to be your God, has promised to you and sworn to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Thank you.
We continue with the blessing after the Torah reading on that same page, 258. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Amen. And before we sit down, I'd like to offer just a little bit of a blessing, and that is that this text actually says something a little bit peculiar. It describes each and every member of the community, and then it says God spoke directly to each. A reminder that each and every one of us has our own spiritual path. And so may we all do well to nurture the unique spiritual needs of those close to us. Help each and every one of us discover our own paths to a meaningful life. Please be seated. Our next aliyah. Our next aliyah describes this covenant not just with those who are standing here physically, but everyone who is a part of this ritual. And so I would like for this aliyah to be for everyone who is joining us online. If you are at home or wherever you might be joining us, I do invite you to rise and to offer the blessing for this aliyah with me today. Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'na'atan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Amen.
Hem, levadhem, anohi, koreit, et habrit, hazot, ve'et ha'ala, hazot, ki et asher yeshno ha imanu omed Hayom. Lifnei Adonai Eloheinu. Va'et Asher Einachnu Po Imanu Hayom. Not with you alone do I make this covenant and this oath, but with each one who stands here among us this day in the presence of Adonai our God, and with each one who is not here among us this day.
And so we continue with the blessing after our Torah reading, that same page. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. This text reminds us that spiritual experiences, they span far beyond physical bounds. And so for everyone who is with us online, may you hear now and clear that we pray together. We are not isolated. We are profoundly united. We continue with our next aliyah. Our next aliyah jumps a little bit, so we move to chapter 30, verse 11 through 14. This particular verse reminds us that this teaching is here and with us, not out in the heavens or across the sea. And so I would like to invite all who have learned this year, all of our adult learners, anyone who has participated in a class, a study session, a learning program, a Torah study, to take on this next aliyah. I invite us to please rise. Let's join together. Baruch et Adonai hamvarach. Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'na'atan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
המצווה הזאת אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לא נפלאת היא ממך ולא רחוקה היא לא בשמיים היא לאמור מי יעלה לנו השמיימה ויקחיה לנו וישמיענו אותה ונעשנה ולא מעבר לים היא לאמור מי יעבר לנו אל עבר הים ויקחיה לנו וישמיענו אותה ונעשנה כי קרוב אליך הדבר מאוד בפיך ובלבבך לעשותו.
For this mitzvah which I command you this day is neither beyond you nor far away. It is not in heaven, causing you to say, who will go up to heaven on our behalf? Get it for us, and let us hear it, that we may do it. And it is not across the sea, causing you to say, who will cross the sea on our behalf? Get it for us, and let us hear it, that we may do it. No, this is so very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you surely do it.
We continue with the blessing after the Torah reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. In the same way that we read in this Torah portion that learning is right there in our hearts and in our mouths, I invite each of you to see yourselves as leaders. Part of the task of leading a spiritual life is opening up our minds with something new, something that teaches us. And there is an old Jewish idea that when you are sad, or when you are lonely, to cure that ailment with the task of learning. And so, my prayer, may we always find our way to this particular gift. Please be seated. We continue with our next reading. This reading shares that we have life and death in front of us always. And so I would like to invite anyone who has confronted that challenge this year, a particularly challenging year, anyone who has experienced a recovery or is in recovery, undergone surgery or found themselves healthy or healing from any illness and is in need of strength this year, or has found themselves with newfound strength, I invite each of us to rise now and offer this blessing this morning. Let's join together on page 258. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach, Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed, Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'na'atan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai, Notein HaTorah. Amen.
Re'eh natati lefanecha hayom et ha'chaim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et hara asher anochi mitzavecha hayom le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lelechet bidrachav ve'lishmor mitzvotav v'chukotav u'mishpatav v'chayita v'ravita u'v'rechacha Adonai Elohecha ba'aretz asher ata b'shama l'rishta v'im yifnei levavcha v'lo tishma v'nedakta v'hishtachavita l'elohim acherim ve'avadatam Higadati lachem hayom ki avod tovedun lo ta'arichun yamim al ha'adama asher ata aver et hayarden levo shama l'rishta. Behold, this day I place before you life and well-being, death and hardship, in that I command you this day to love Adonai and walk in the ways of your God, to observe the mitzvot, laws, and judgments, so you may live and flourish, blessed by Adonai your God in the land that is about to be yours. But if you turn away, refusing to listen, and going astray, bow down to other gods and serve them, I tell you now, you will perish, yes, you will perish, and you will not last long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess.
We continue with the blessing after the Torah reading. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, notein HaTorah. Amen. It is traditional to offer a blessing then. For anyone who has come out of this place, perhaps still seeing it ahead of them, but offering gratitude for what is behind. And so I offer these words of Birkat Gomel. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shigmaleni kol tov. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has bestowed this goodness upon us. May you continue to go from strength to strength, and know that that strength is found here in this room and with the love you might find in it. As we go from strength to strength, may we find ourselves additionally in hand in hand. Please be seated. Our fifth and final aliyah, we read about the choice of life and death and the invitation to choose life. And so, I invite anyone who has made a big choice this year, difficult or easy, a career move, a move to a new city, any major change, anyone who has chosen life for themselves this year, to please rise for this aliyah. Maybe a bar bat mitzvah. Let's join together on page 258. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach. Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'na'atan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen.
העדותי בכם היום את השמיים ואת הארץ, החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך, הברכה והקללה, ובחרת בחיים למען תחיה אתה וזרעך, לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, לשמוע בקולו ולדבקה בו, כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך, לשבת על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב לתת להם. This day I call heaven and earth to witness regarding your life, regarding you. Life and death I have set before you, blessing and curse. Choose life so that you and your children may live, by loving, obeying, and staying close to Adonai your God. For God gives you life and length of days to dwell upon the land that Adonai swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
We continue with the blessing after our Torah reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. May this new choice for you be one not only that affirms and emboldens the life that you have chosen, but may it also be a reminder. This set of verses states that this blessing is not just for us, but those who will come after us. And so may we always remember that every journey begins with a choice. As one good thing leads to another, mitzvah goreret mitzvah, may this be the start of many happy times to come. Please be seated. We continue now offering first a yashar koach. We can say this together on the count of three. Yashar koach means, I'm not going to translate it literally, but it means great job, essentially. 1, 2, 3. Yashar koach. Yashar koach to our readers for a beautiful, beautiful reading of the words in our Torah this morning. And in the presence of our Torah, we too would like to offer words of healing. So this morning I invite us to think of those who are in need of healing in our congregation, in our extended community. Together we are thinking of Miriam Elisheva, Colleen Carver, Darren Hammer, Steve Gratch, Laura Bleiberg, Robin Nahan, Harriet Ellis, Bob Wallace, Shoshana Arella Elisheva, Bob Bender, Wendy Bender, Dorothy Kay, Joshua Kay, Marlene Sanchez, Hannah Hamrosbrock, Lori Gerstmann, Renee Simon, David Sachs, Leah Pask, Burton Gifford, Kim Gifford, Jordan Gifford, Brandon Berry, Marcella Gersh, Randy Holbert, Wade Chernick, Sandra Chernick, Nadine Picar, Anita Noriga, Leon Bland, Carlos Sanchez, Rosalind Duskal, Helene Miller,
Christina Kubelka, Barbara Wiegling, Yaakov Ben Eliyahu V'Yehudit, Erwin Spiegel, David Randall, Danny Grief, Sharon Eisner, Diane and Nick Repkin, Bill Raphael, Janice Robbins, Brian Edelman, Cheryl Fossum, Marina Rothstein, Chaim Joe Adler, Janet Hyman, Bill McDaniel, Ellie Brooks, Andrew Palea, Mark Briggs, Beth Palmer, Virginia Wilson, Bertha Spears, Mike Molly, Sharon Cohen Hanover, Linda Allen, Jim Kellner, Julie Raphael Wood, Rachel Herman, Janice Krantz, Mindy Raphael Hyde, Larry Blum, David Roman, David Keene, Andrew Paella, Richard Mills, and Talia Kooten. I invite us to join together with words of healing on page 273. As we continue with lifting and dressing our Torah, I'd like to invite the congregation to please rise in body or in spirit.
Please be seated. I will admit that I didn't know what they were when they started popping up. Bumper stickers at that time were terse but decidedly grammatical, using at least some witty combination of words or a strategically placed verb to get a laugh. If you can read this, you are too close. Or, if history repeats itself, I'm getting a dinosaur. So I was puzzled when 26.2 started showing up on little stickers in the backs of cars, the bottom corners of rear windshields. I've always had a sort of awe of people who ran marathons, feeling somewhere in between admiration over an incredible accomplishment that takes real talent and determination, and incredulous that someone would go to the trouble of making the trip. You know, you could always take a bus. You don't have to do it on foot. You must really, really want that complimentary coupon. No wonder that those who make it the full distance, those who run the full marathon, they want to place a little trophy somewhere that they will see it regularly, a point of pride. Although I think it's a little ironic to put a running sticker on the back of a car. It almost begs the question, did you run it or drive it? Because driving, I am not nearly as impressed. Years ago, I met someone at a wedding who ran marathons regularly. It was his vocation, what he loved to do, and seemed to put a great deal of time into thinking and reading and training for the task. I remember being surprised because he was a small person, not the tall and lanky physique I would have associated with a hobby runner. I didn't doubt he got lots of exercise. He was clearly in great shape, but not the picture of someone you'd see on the cover of a running magazine: bright hair, short limbs, a wide smile. I was intrigued when we talked about his running. He started describing it to me. It's incredible to me that anyone could bring themselves to train for a distance that long, but the way he described it, well, the experiences sounded a little different. It didn't sound like he was just spending a sunny afternoon on his trek. These were longer. Through the better course of a day, sometimes from early in the morning until very late at night. And he described not so much getting in the zone as entering a kind of trance, almost superhuman. How long was that run? I asked. That was a 50, but right now I'm working on an 100. 100 what? Is that like some new term I wasn't hip to? 100%? I was hoping he would say 100 feet. 100 miles, he said. I was shocked. I genuinely didn't know that was possible. I get tired driving 100 miles. And I'm not the car. It's the kind of trip I check my tire pressure for, and here was someone who did it on foot. How in the world? I couldn't help but ask all about it. It takes months of careful training. You work up to it after years of practice. My favorite tidbit was that he would buy a new pair of shoes for the ultra marathon, as it's called,
And by the end, he would have completely worn through the soles. But I remember one other thing very clearly. He described to me the time after the run with a bit of remorse. It takes me out for days, sometimes as much as a week, he said. After the run, I can't do anything. I have to just rest and recover. It would be safe to say that we have just come through a marathon. Not a sprint, as all of us came to realize as the temporary shutdown of March 2019 stretched its way beyond the anticipated initial few months and made its way to marathon length as it cornered the year mark. We pushed and pushed. We put our lives on hold or reinvented them. We learned to go without the seemingly extra things that kept us in balance during our already and normally very demanding lives. And then we ran right into summer. And I think that was when many of us started breathing again. 6:15, that magic date, so nearly reminiscent of 613 commandments in the Torah, an icon of both overloaded capacity and profound accomplishment. And two more even than that. We went on vacation. We hugged family again and came back out into the wide, beautiful world. I'm proud we ran right through the finish line. And it was not easy. I remember talking to a colleague early in the pandemic about what it was like to run programming via Zoom. We traded ideas and challenges back and forth, shared tips for lifting the hood of the platform and finding better ways for the tech to help us communicate. A setting here, a new microphone. And I remember her saying something that surprised me. She said it took her a while to realize that one of the hardest parts of the new platform for users was the transitions. In person, there's usually a natural pause between sections of a program as one speaker walks away from the mic and the other ascends. Or people migrate from one room to another as an afternoon continues, but on Zoom you snap right from one to the other, instantaneous. I think filmmakers and editors know this. There has to be a moment for the eyes and the mind to breathe, to find their way into the next scene, and the very same way it takes time to transition out of the reality of the pandemic, just as it does to transition into it. We have been going and going from one thing to the next. Creating an office out of a corner of a room and moving our schoolhouses home and then back to school. We hosted programs online and then in person and then hybrid and then online again. Changing and then changing again with remarkable resilience, snapping back and forth. And whereas we may have become accustomed to the constant change, it's not natural for our hearts and minds to constantly turn over like that. We need time to breathe, to transition. And here's the kicker. We thought we were running a marathon, hitting that 26.2 milestone and then picking up our ribbon and going home. But we're still going. I don't think there's any feeling quite like the one of raising up our hopes, seeing the end in sight, and then having our guts sink while we watch it draw further, not near. Thank God we have a vaccine that, according to the CDC and our own community health experts, significantly decreases the likelihood of negative effects of the virus, but a new variant is here. And our community is scared. By far, the majority of our congregation participated in services online on Rosh Hashanah. And for just about every person I spoke to, it was because of their family's needs due to the virus. Not to mention that those under 12 are not able to get the vaccine. We entered a 26-2 and discovered that we are in an ultramarathon. I first heard about Haruki Murakami from a friend in high school. He was a fairly literary guy, so when he mentioned a new author, my ears perked up. At the time, Murakami was a celebrated writer, but he hadn't launched into quite the popularity he enjoys today, where you can pick up his novels anywhere. Airport bookstores had his tome, IQ 84, spread out across their entryway tables for what seemed like months when it came out in 2011. Every once in a while, an author will grab me, and I'll read as many books of theirs as I can get a hold of. Much easier now with the internet, but it used to be a fun treasure hunt to travel to new bookstores in vacation cities and see if I could find an unread novel hidden away on a dusty shelf. The less popular, the rarer, the more satisfying to collect. And then tuck myself away and crawl through the lightly scuffed pages. He's a fiction writer. So I was surprised when I brought home a slim volume one day and discovered that it wasn't. It was almost a memoir. And while his voice was clearly there, it was a very different style than his other books. An entire book on running. Given that most of his work is on culture, relationships, loneliness, and the supernatural, it seemed a strange topic for him. But he realized one day that when people would ask him about his daily runs, his practice and periodic long-distance journeys, he couldn't say much, only that he ran. And when asked what this now iconic intellectual of the literary world thought about when he was on these sometimes hours-long journeys, he only said that he didn't think. Murakami noted that you can't understand and make sense of something when you are in the middle of it. So he sat down at his desk and wrote. In the flowing pages, he mused on the zone mind we are all too familiar with from hearing from athletes of all kinds, and the long-fought feeling of accomplishment brought on by endurance and careful focus, although in his way he describes it with the sky and the ocean. We have been on this run in this pandemic for so long, it would be safe to say that we have entered the zone or are so busy with the task that we are lost in it. But this is the time of the year when we stop and reflect on our lives, and few things have been more impactful than the pandemic. And perhaps the most difficult part is recognizing the unspeakable tragedy of lives lost. While most catastrophes happen all at once, this has been a shockingly slow and mundane one. Like most days, we go to work, check email, and walk the dog, but this year we have done so knowing that hundreds of thousands of lives are being lost, millions around the world. So I'd like to invite us to stop for a brief moment and recognize that. Last year, at the High Holy Days, I sadly shared that almost 200,000 people in the U.S. had died due to the virus. This year, that number is more than 650,000. Sometimes, and especially with death, there is nothing to say, but we mourn together. We will certainly look back and note things that could have been done differently and better, but today, I invite us simply to recognize and hold each other in grief. Murakami continues in his book, marveling over the act of taking a long journey on foot. Eventually, he betrays his underlying thoughts and muses on how taking on a long-distance run is similar to writing a novel. Advice for budding novelists and anyone with a long road ahead of them, and ever the mystic, he sets into his description of rhythm, how the pace of the world can be exemplified and accompanied by the gentle pounding of runners' feet on the path. Quote, To keep on going, you have to keep up the rhythm. This is the important thing for long-term projects. Once you set the pace, the rest will follow, he writes. We have all found ourselves in the middle of a long trek, one that can't be shortened by increasing our speed, and so I invite us to rest and pace ourselves. I was frightened when I started my first 5K. I'd never done anything like that before, but I signed up on an invitational whim and knew that there was a t-shirt involved, that's all. So I went home, I got changed and showed up for the start of the race a couple hours later, and when I arrived, they handed me a little flat fob that looked like a keychain without the ring. Someone told me to tie it into my shoelaces, so I did. The start of the race was a little chaotic as everyone crowded around the decorated archway that signed the beginning. The little shoe ornament turned out to be a tracker, so that they could stagger runners' beginnings through the small arch, but everyone could still compete for time. I'd also taken a look at the map of the run around downtown, but I wasn't very familiar with the area, so I had visions of missing a turn like Wile E. Coyote and running right past the route, stopping for directions at a gas station. But it was clearly marked. Even when other runners weren't present, it was easy to know the way. I knew about pacing and kept myself moving on an easy clock. So I was surprised when the end of the race came up. I'd expected this to be a real grueling experience, one that pushed me a little beyond my limits, but in truth, even after the race, I was still ready to go. It wasn't nearly as difficult as I had imagined. I'd been running for a little while by then, and it turned out the race wasn't so different than my weekly jaunt down to the public library and back. I wasn't going to win any awards, but I was happy. As it turns out, I was much more capable and resilient than I had imagined. And so here's the good news. We've already done this. We've already learned what pacing, what work, and what adjustments need to be made in order to be successful at navigating this pandemic. We know how to run this, and we know how to do that together. So all that remains is keeping our legs moving. We'll get there. And we're certainly closer now, safer, better informed, and practiced. So let's keep on. We're close. I know we'll get there together. Shana Tova.
Page 294. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha, Hashivenu Elecha v'nashuva, Kaddish Yameinu, Yameinu Kekedem. Al tashlichenu, al tashlichenu. Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachim Aleinu, Aleinu. Vekabel berachamim, berachamim uvratzon. It
We continue on page 296. Together, our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong.
Lie, 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 lie. Ashamnu,
Ashamnu,
Bagadnu,
Bagadnu,
Gazalnu,
Gazalnu,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Dibarnu Dofi,
Yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 lai. Ha'evinu,
Ha'evinu,
v'hirshanu,
V'hirshanu,
zanu, Tefanu sheker.
Tefanu sheker.
Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Ya'atznu ra.
Ya'atznu ra.
Ki zovnu. La'atznu. Maradnu. Niatznu. Sararnu. Avinu. Pashanu. Sararnu. Kishinu oref. Ay, 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 lai, lai, ay, lai, 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 ay, lai, 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 lai. Rashanu. Shichatnu. Tiavnu. Tainu. Titanu. Ay, ay, lai, 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 ay, lai, 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 ay, lai, 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 lai.
We continue on page 300.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'ones uvratzon ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'yodim uvlo yodim.
Together, the ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bivli da'at ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha beritzat raglaim lehara.
The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bechozek yad ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bezilzul horim umorim.
The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha beyetzer hara ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bekashut oref.
The ways we have wronged you by giving into our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bechachash uvchazav ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bekalut rosh.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha besiach siftotenu ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha betzarut ayin.
The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and harm we have caused in your world through envy.
shechatanu lefanecha בגלוי ובסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשנאת חינם.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, the harm we have caused in your world by hating without cause.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפריקת עול, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במאכל ובמשתה.
The ways we have wronged you by losing self-control and harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב.
The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality and harm we have caused in your world by hardening our hearts.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנסך ובמרבית, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במשא ובמתן.
The ways we have wronged you through greed and exploitation and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty and business.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהרהור הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות.
The ways we have wronged you through our innermost thoughts and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחפת שוחד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחילול השם.
The ways we have wronged you by offering or accepting bribes and harm we have caused in your world by profaning your name in public. Well, our thoughts now turn to those in our community who have died in recent days or in this season in years past. And so we mourn with those who are observing Shiva and Shloshim, the 7 and 30 days after the death of someone near to them, and those who are near to those whose yard sites fall on this Yom Kippur. And so together we are thinking of those who are near to Yaakov Bosner, and those who are near to Alan Love. We think of Bill and Christina. And think of those near to David Blumberg. We think of Sherry and John and Marcy. We think of those near to Bill Coleman. We think of Sharon and Rachel, Brian, Kyla, Ella, and Lola. And we think of those near to Marty Karasik. We think of Cindy and Mark and Harrison and Amelia. We think of those near to Fritz Howe. We think of Basha, Naomi, and Shifra. Additionally, we mark the yard site, the anniversary of the death of Louis Gale, Ida Goldhirsch, Carl Gordon, Rhonda Janis, Aldadar Kellen, Victor Kessler, Lee Maddock, Evelyn Palmquist, Helen Rabin, Selma Reichelsheimer, Anna Sapel, and Sarah Siegel. If you are here observing Shiva or Shloshim, the 7 or 30 days after the death of someone near to you, I'd like to invite you to rise first so that we might recognize you in your grief. And if you are here observing the 12 months after the passing of someone near to you, I'd like to invite you to rise now so that we can recognize you in your grief. you are observing the yard site, the anniversary of the passing of someone near to you, I'd like to invite you to rise now so that we can recognize you in your grief. And now I'd like to invite all of us to rise in love and in solidarity as we offer these words of Mourner's Kaddish, which are on page 606. 606 of our prayer books. Yitgadal, Yitgadash Shemei Rabba, Be'alma Divrach Yurtei Be'amlich Malchutei, B'chayechon V'yomechon, Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, B'agala Uvizman Kariv Ve'imru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam U'Me'el Maya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudisha B'richu, Le'ela u'le'ela kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlam rabba min shemaya, v'chayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. V'sei shalom b'mramav, hu ya'asei shalom, alenu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, amen. Zichronam libracha. May the memories of those near to us always be a source of blessing. Let us say together, amen. We continue on page 318 with a blessing for this day, Hayom Hayom.
Infinite source of goodness, help us to see the good in ourselves, in others and in the world around us. Teach us to cultivate a discerning mind, to know right from wrong, and a listening heart. Open to love and forgiveness. Amen. 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 Hayom Tamseinu. Amen. Hayom Tevarchenu. Amen. Hayom Tegadlenu. Amen. Hayom Tidrashenu Letova. Amen. Hayom Tichtevenu Lechaim Tovim. Amen. 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 Hayom Tamseinu. Amen. Hayom Tishma Shavatenu. Amen. Hayom Titmechenu B'min Tzidkecha. Amen. 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 Hayom Tamseinu. Amen. 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 Hayom Tamseinu. Amen.
I'd like to offer a special thank you to everyone who made this day such a beautiful and powerful holiday this morning. All of our volunteers, and so thank you to our staff behind the scenes, to Eric and to Mike and Kiki. Thank you to our volunteer English readers as well as our Torah readers who brought the words of this tradition into our hearts. Thank you to our choir for bringing this music alive. And thank you to David York for guiding us in that life, in that music. Well, we continue today together by learning, by taking what we have set in front of us in the prayer book and mulling and chewing it a little bit. Well, that's not a good metaphor for today. Maybe we're thinking about it. We're fasting it over. We'll learn together. We'll discuss. How about that? Yeah. And so we have forums starting at 12:30, and they'll be via Zoom. And I think it would be hard-pressed to know which one to attend. Here are the Zoom offerings. New Beginnings in Fiddler on the Roof, led by Jerry Prell. The Value of Disagreement, led by Steve Gordon. The Power of Vulnerability, led by Rabbi Michal Loving. And Yom Kippur and Hasidic Tales, led by Ron Artstein. I am sorry for all of us that we have to choose between those. They're profound. I understand that they will be recorded for anyone who would like to watch afterwards. Again, they'll be on Zoom. You'll find the information for the Zoom links and such online. And then our family service continues today at 2 p.m. at Marina Vista Park, as well as Yizkor at 4 o'clock, and then afternoon and Ne'ilah at 5. Wishing all of us a meaningful and easy day, a deep and reflective and introspective day. May we all find meaning in thinking, reflecting, taking this time aside as we join together on this day. I'd like to also invite all of us to enjoy this very last piece by our choir as Cantor Cooper and I make our way to the entrance of our sanctuary so that we can welcome everyone in person. Wishing everyone who's joining us online a good and a sweet new year. Shana Tova, Umituka, and Gemar, Chatima Tova. May we all be inscribed for blessing in this coming year. Shana Tova.